Hello everyone and welcome in today's video, and we had a pretty big move in the market this week. This was backed by a couple of my stocks in my portfolio that have just done really well, especially in the past weeks on some earnings beats, which I want to cover. As you can see, currently the portfolio up 13% on the week, so you can see pretty big move in the portfolio, and it's fairly close to finally hitting six figures at that 100K mark, which before we start on anything else in this video, it's just crazy to see this and the journey we've kind of come on over time, and just to be so close to hitting kind of that 100K milestone just feels really good personally, and I can't wait to see it and see what other limits and what other new highs we take the portfolio to going to in the future. But I just kind of wanted to open up with this and just say, for anyone who's starting with smaller money, just consistently invest, just keep working on your process. If you think you can be a great investor, put in the work, keep just consistently investing over time, and it's inevitable to hit these large numbers. For a little bit of context, I actually started investing as soon as I turned 18, and I was making barely any money at Family Dollar. I think I was probably doing $50 a month. And then I got another job where I got a little bit of a raise to like $10 or $11. And now I could do maybe, I think it was like $100 a month or something. To now I'm able to put in a lot more money as I've gotten older and just gotten higher paying jobs and more income. But just great to see. I just want to start off with that. But really just hitting on what are the big movers in the portfolio. It's really three main ones. Palantir also did have a great move, but again, I only have 5 shares left of that. But I want to focus on three main ones, being Elf, Zeta, and Honest. I want to first start with Zeta because Zeta is my favorite stock, and actually it just took over as the largest position in my portfolio. So currently up 51% on the position, average cost of 17.59. If we look on the 1 week, up about 20%. They had really great earnings. Of course, came in and beat their estimates like they consistently do, came in and raised guidance. And currently it is sitting at a pretty high percentage of my portfolio, but I'm not looking to cash this or cut the position anytime soon. I still think the stock has a ton of runway in the growing futures, not even over the next 5 years, but over the next decade. I do think this company has plenty of runway, and one thing I don't want to do is cut one of my winners just because it's gone up a lot and it's starting to be a large percentage of the portfolio. I do think I got a gem of a stock right here. I do think I got a company with a really good moat, or a really wide moat, I should say. And I don't think this is an average company. I think this is an incredible business that I got at a reasonable valuation. And I don't want to make the same mistake I did with Palantir, where I cut too much of an extremely great company. So this one I'm fine holding for the long term. I have no need to, especially this early, I have no need to cut any of my position just because of portfolio sizing and how big a percentage it's turned into. Even my original fair value, which I had on numbers that are honestly at this point looking like my numbers were too bearish even in my bull case, I still had my fair value around the $35 to $40 range. And that's under my base case assumptions, which my base case assumptions are looking very, very conservative now. One thing I did want to touch on with Zeta Global, which I'm going to do an actual video where I break through and go through the entire earnings after I have a little more time to digest it and get it all formatted. But one thing I did want to touch on just in this video real quick are two main things. So first, of course, we're excited to keep seeing that super scaled customer count grow. Grew by 8 people quarter over quarter. Remember, a super scaled customer is anyone bringing in more than $1 million of revenue. So that's always great to see. But the main thing, besides obviously them coming in and beating their numbers, which we always want to see and we expect from Zeta, 20th straight time beat and raise, the main thing is this business intelligence side. They touched a little bit on this if you watched that conference call when they were first going over the Palantir deal, but they touched on it more on this call, and they're starting to bring more light to it. And with the Zeta business intelligence is basically leveraging their huge data cloud to kind of give clients ability to get insight into their customers and just the business environment in general, and they're starting to sell that so that clients can use that. So for example, they have some of these use cases they have in here. So for this one, a real estate agency would ask where should they open their new store locations and how many openings can their brand support. Another one I liked down here, you can ask the TAM for your market. Where should I focus my efforts to prioritize share of wallet opportunities? Getting some insight on how customers are viewing your product, as well as how many of them are actually converting to sales. This is very useful information. And because with this Zeta Business Intelligence, this is going to be just an additional thing they can cross-sell to their current clients, where they're just giving them a lot of the marketing solutions and a lot of the ability to attract and retain those customers. This is now also giving an additional revenue driver for the company, where they can also start implementing this and of course upcharge for this as well, which I think is just going to continue to drive strong ARPU going in the coming years. So this is just another thing that's going to add on. One other thing on that, I know even in the quarterly earnings, the CEO David actually mentioned that it came up on Palantir's earnings call, where someone was basically asking how they felt about like potentially partnering with potential competitors in the future, and that came up, and it was confirmed they were referring to Zeta, the one who asked that question, which is just great to see that they're even being seen like, okay, kind of in that same light as someone who could be a potential competitor. It just kind of shows the strength and how good the business actually is, that it's being lumped into the same category as that. So I remain extremely bullish on the company. If anything, after the earnings, as well as another interview the CEO did, I know Wealthmatica was on that one, I'm even more bullish on the company than I've ever been. I have no care to sell my shares. I'll probably continue adding shares, honestly. Not as aggressive, of course, but I'll still continue just slowly adding maybe one or two here and there, just building my position up and up. But with that, yeah, Zeta. And I guess the one other thing is, I know on earnings, funny enough, so it was pushing up. Where was the actual earnings day? I believe it was right here. Yeah, I want to say it was on the 4th, which usually this. Okay. I thought I'd have the date. Okay, I believe it was on the 4th, though. You kind of saw like a sharp drop, so there was strength the entire day into earnings, and then as soon as earnings released, it just kind of tanked right after. This is because, or in my opinion, I believe this was just algorithms picking it up, because a lot of different places were reporting that they missed earnings. Even Robinhood, it gave me a notification saying they missed earnings, where they basically make a mistake where they're comparing the adjusted estimates to the GAAP income, where there's obviously going to be a difference there. So they're not comparing apples to apples. They're comparing what analysts projected for what they expect of GAAP earnings to the adjusted ones, if that makes sense. So because of that, it crashed the stock within like a minute or 2 minutes. The stock crashed, but then it quickly rebounded when people realized that. So that's what makes me think it's likely algorithms that are trading that just were kind of reading the headlines and auto dumped on it, because nobody can physically go through a report that fast. It's not possible. It was literally within like a minute or 2 minutes of the press release coming out. But with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So we're going to go on to Honest next. So Honest, this one as well had a really good earnings beat. This one was really on expansion of margins. You can see on the week, up 50%. I went from negative on this position to now up 34% within a single week. And if we go ahead and turn over here, we can see currently they came in with a diluted EPS of about 9 cents. And if we go over here, we can see analysts were actually projecting them on a GAAP basis. They were projecting them to have no EPS, and then they came in with 9. And then also, if we see over here on the normalized basis, the adjusted basis, they came in and beat on that as well. So, which with about 10 cents versus 1 cent is what analysts were expecting. We can also see they beat on revenue, as the average estimate in the quarter was about 80.8 million. And we can see if we go over here, revenue came in I believe it was 83 million. Or yeah, 83.3 million in the quarter. This business has been a great turnaround so far, and there's not much I really need to say on this. The team's just kind of executing. Margins have been continuing to expand, which we can see right there with the more profitable EPS. They also raised guidance as well, which we can go ahead and touch on right here. Raised it. Now the low end is 319, where prior the high end of revenue was 312. So that's already $7 million more on the lower end, which they'll probably easily come in and beat that. As well as a raise across the board, higher margins, more EBITDA. Everything's looking great with this company. They actually came in and beat EPS so much that it is really shocking, and you can see that in the price action as the stock's getting a re-rating in price. As keep in mind, before this, at the start of the week, $3.70. I believe the market cap was somewhere around the $500 million range. With this, good chance the stock continues strength into the end of the year. I would not be surprised if the stock ended, I'd say probably above $6, or no, I'd say probably around the $7 range by the end of the year. But obviously, we'll see how that plays out. You never know with these sort of things. Next one and last one we're going to go ahead and cover on this video is just Elf Beauty. Again, not much to say on this one. They came in, they put in their numbers, and they just came in and beat across the board again. So this one, big move here, up 1750 or 17.5% on the week. And there's not a ton to say here besides they just came in and they really executed. The company's doing really well, as we can see. Adjusted net income 104.5 million. And we can see here adjusted diluted EPS of 175, where obviously this one was another big beat on analysts, because for the actual adjusted earnings, analysts were expecting about 72 cents. They came in $1.75, so they just came in and completely crushed earnings. And even on a GAAP basis, you can see analysts were expecting this at 38 cents, and they came in at $1.12 on a GAAP basis for net income. So again, this is another thing where the brand's just continuing to show strength. And on top of that, margins continue to expand. I think I remember it said the gross margins hit 83%. That was also with an actual tariff adjustment as well. But even without the tariff adjustment, they still would have been up about 400 basis points, which is insane, because how many companies do you know with gross margins above 80%, especially in the more retail space? Usually when you hear about these like extremely high gross margins, it's something more in the SaaS category where they have very little overhead. But for something that's an actual retailer to have gross margins that high, that's actually pretty insane. So if we go ahead and take a quick look at the revenue estimates, so the average in the quarter was about 466 million, and we can see for revenue they came in with what looks like 479. So really good beat on that. Over 10 million. Yeah, over $10 million beat on that. So again, this is another company that continues to execute. This one I was actually buying last year. And so funny thing with this stock. So as you can see, my average cost is about 62 on here. I was actually buying last year around, I want to say when it dipped to 62 the first time. If we look, was it more than a year ago already? It might have been more than a year ago. I'm trying to remember when I first bought my shares. I think it was around this range. Yeah, April of 2025. This is where I was buying it. And this stock is just so volatile. It's one of the more volatile ones I have, because shortly after buying it, not even like 2 or 3 months, it pretty much doubled into the 125 range. Then it crashed back down to these levels. I didn't add any more just because my position was already kind of big, but I still really believed in the company, so I didn't sell off anything either. And now we can see it's starting to return back to these highs it reached earlier last year, which is great to see. I personally picked it up. I wasn't even really running projections on this company. This one I was more of looking at it where I saw a company with a forward PE at the time of around 17, I want to say. And just from, this is a company I've always kept up with throughout the last couple of years, where I was just always kind of checking on them. And they've always been a company that comes in and consistently beats and raises their guidance, and they always have really big beats, similar to how Zeta does. So this was one where I didn't really need to do a lot of projections on it. I just saw that the forward PE was so depressed. I know how the company operates. I know how their management is whenever they're giving guidance and how they always come in and execute. So this was one where I just trusted the management team, and that's why I picked up a lot of shares then. And as we can see, it's still paying off currently. So again, no complaints there. Now this video, I just wanted to quickly give like a little overview of the weeks or the moves during the week for my biggest positions. So there you have it on there. I'm going to have a full video on the earnings for Zeta where I go more in depth on that because I know I just kind of quickly covered it. I was not planning on doing it for Elf or Honest. However, if there is enough interest in those, I can start putting that together as well and release that after the Zeta video. But I'm going to really leave that up to whatever public opinion is. So if y'all want a video on that where I go in and break down the numbers and give my thoughts on it, I can go ahead and go more in depth on those two as well. But please just let me know. I did make a video on Amazon as well. Last week, Amazon did really well as well, which was great for the portfolio. So this has just been a great earnings season for the portfolio, and I can't wait to see what new highs we hit next. So I'll definitely probably make a follow-up video if we do touch 100K sometime this week, just as a little bit of a celebration, something fun. But thank y'all all for watching. And please, if you have any questions or anything you want me to cover, please let me know in the comment section below.